Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I thought it would be a neat idea to do like a book review style playlist, I guess, and go over some books that have been helping me through PMHNP school that aren't textbooks. They're not assigned by the instructors, but they're like narrative style books that kind of help you get a grasp of what being a mental health practitioner looks like in the real world. So I think that's the gist of what I'm looking at in these books. I think I've mentioned before that I do a lot of learning through reading the books, like reading people's encounters in work and with patients. And I do a lot of learning in clinicals and then through practice questions. So this is one of the ways that I can better relate to the field. So the first book I finished, it actually took me a little while because I was reading it while I was at work. So I would get like a half a chapter in a night or something along those lines. But it's called The Devil You Know by Dr. Gwen Adshead. Adshead. Hopefully I said that right. She is a psychiatrist in the UK and she did a lot of work at Broadmoor, I believe it is, which is like a UK high security forensic psych hospital. And she has it broken up into patients. So the chapters through the books are patients' names, and then it goes through like their background, when she got to them, her interactions with them, and how she managed to break through with some of them. So because these are a lot of forensic patients, it's got almost a little bit of a true crime feel to it. But then she approaches the patient more along the lines of like what happened to this person that led them here? How was their childhood? What's their genetic makeup? What kind of life did they live prior to these things happening? And what kind of warning signs might have been there that family or friends or neighbors didn't see, or maybe did see but didn't think was important prior to whatever crime they committed. So it's been a little while since I read the book. It's been probably a month. I should have done this review a little sooner, but it's been busy and it seems like I've been sick constantly since the middle of October. So what this book doesn't have is a lot of pharmacology. There is not much mention of pharmacology, and if it is, it's in a very general sense as to like what psychiatric medications can do to patients, like the sedating effects. But what there is quite a bit of is therapeutic communication and like therapeutic talk, therapy, that aspect, that point of view, which I don't know if that's different in the UK. If their psychiatrists prescribe and do therapy, that's not often the case here in the US. A lot of the PMHNPs that work in like private practice, a lot of times they just do medication management. They obviously have to have a decent relationship with the patient. They have to have therapeutic communication. But as for actual therapies and even training in therapies like CBT, DBT, ERP, all of the very specific therapies to treat very specific diagnoses, we don't learn that specifically. We can take that extra step and learn it and incorporate that into our practice, but that's not often the case when it comes to PMHNPs, which is why we have a team a lot of times to take care of patients. But from an outpatient standpoint, patients don't always want to participate in the therapy. So there's less of a team approach when you're looking at it from an outpatient basis than you are from an inpatient basis. So a couple of themes I noticed throughout this book is that some of these patients used violence as a form of communication. Maybe they had these feelings that they just couldn't communicate, or they thought they couldn't communicate them. They thought they couldn't talk to people about them. And it built and built and built until they did this act of violence, which essentially models like the patient in crisis. So it's kind of a way to think about the patient in crisis. Another theme that we saw throughout the book was shame and guilt related to what these patients have done after the fact. A lot of these patients really regret what they've done, or it's like a loop of guilt that kind of keeps them in this bad mindset. And it's something that I definitely see in practice, just kind of a broken person after, like, I work in a forensic hospital myself, so there are definitely some broken people there. And while we do help to medicate and stabilize their diagnoses, I think we could probably improve upon the therapy aspect and helping reframe their mindset. Another theme that she kept bringing to the book was that these patients are humans, and a lot of times we dehumanize them. So even in pop culture, um, the Netflix series Monster. Now, while the actual series, if you watch it, it does kind of humanize them almost to a fault. It kind of makes up stories to make them more likable and believable. The title itself gives you the idea of how we think about these people. They're not people anymore. They've surpassed that. Now they're monsters. They're creatures that live in our brain as more of the acts that they did. That's how we remember them, than as the people who started out as children and were brought up typically in pretty terrible households. So remembering the human behind the patient, that was a theme consistent throughout the book. And then finally, another theme is that rehab is possible. So rehabilitation of the patients is possible through hard work and a good team. I think there might have been one case where she didn't make progress with the person. And like I said, it's been about a month since I've read it, and I'm really terrible about holding on to these things. I hold on to the themes and the fact that I enjoyed the book. It was a good read. I liked going through her stories. But as for the specifics, they don't stick with me for some reason. But I think there was only one out of, like, I don't know, 8 or so patients that she wrote about. There may have been one that she was not able to get through to or to rehab, or perhaps by the time they started narrowing in on what the issue was, it was too late. I want to say there was one story where the patient couldn't deal with what they had done by the time they had reached a breakthrough mentally. So I think this book is good for quite a few people. It's good for true crime junkies because they are interesting stories. They're true stories. They're not as glorified or glorified, but I think the general population who's interested in forensics and true crime would enjoy this book. Obviously, good for the PMHNP student. Gives you a look into the mind of a different type of people. We don't always think about forensics. I mean, maybe you do, but a lot of what I'm learning in PMHNP school is how to take care of the individual patient, almost from the point of a office setting or primary care provider setting. And that might just be because I haven't gotten into the inpatient setting yet, and we will get into that next semester. That is our crisis stabilization and inpatient emergency department kind of acute psychiatric emergency semester. So maybe I just haven't seen it yet, but I think a lot of times we don't consider the forensic side of psychiatry. I would almost like to reread it from start to finish a little bit faster, just so I can really internalize it. But there are so many books I'd like to read right now that it's just not a possibility to go through it, especially since I did grasp quite a bit of it. But it was a good one, and I would probably go back to it in the future. I do that with books. I am an avid reader, and I have read the Harry Potter series probably about 10 times. And another one of my favorites, Dan Brown, his Robert Langdon series, which I just realized there was another book that came out. Love those. Read those multiple times also. And so this is probably one I would go back to kind of get those takeaways again, make it fresh in my head in the future. So I think that's all I have about this book. Maybe these videos will be a little bit shorter than the typical ones that I upload. Let me know if there's a book you've heard about that relates to the field. Otherwise, I've got a list going that I need to go through. I just need to make myself put down the doom scrolling and the Facebook before bed type situation and get my book out instead. I need to make myself read it. When I read it, I really enjoy it, but it is kind of hard breaking that pattern of technology enough to get a book back out. So if you know of any good books, send them my way. Give me the names. If you enjoyed this, let me know. And I hope you have a great week. Bye.